Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. Uh, Good day to all students. So today I'm going to give a lecture on epidemiology of vector-borne diseases in Malaysia. Okay, so this is basically a continuation of the lecture from CDC. So the learning outcome for vector-borne diseases in Malaysia, epidemiology, is basically the same as the CDC, whereby you need to know the burden or the magnitude of the disease in Malaysia and compare and strategize the control and preventive measures, as well as to know the laws and how to implement the laws in real practice. So when we talk about vector-borne diseases, it is mainly classified into three. The first one is the most important vector. Vector, when I say vector, I mean not the mathematical vector, but it is basically the mechanism on how the virus or the microorganism transmit from one person to another. So the vector here is basically the mosquito. So Aedes will bring about diseases such as dengue, okay, the most important one, yellow fever, chikungunya, as well as Zika. For malaria, it is brought by Anopheles mosquito, alright. And last but not least, another important vector is actually Culex. So Culex, what does Culex brings you? So you need to find out, you need to remember what Prof. Paki and Dr. Sorya's lecture. What are the microorganisms that can be brought by Culex mosquitoes? Okay, so most important thing is you need to know dengue. So basically, if you look at the current situation, even before the COVID-19, dengue has been one of the most dangerous and most dangerous communicable diseases. Why do I say dangerous? Is because it is always a problem, and somehow or rather people do not learn from past experiences. Because the prevention control for dengue is actually not that complicated. Dengue, you need to have a good attitude in hygiene practices, as well as knowing how to eliminate the breeding grounds. So without the vector, without the mosquito, there will be no dengue. So if you look at the statistics, the most important or the most valuable data that you can get publicly, okay, you do not need to go to Jabatan Kesihatan or PKD to get it, is from iDengue. Okay, you can just Google it. iDengue. You can see that the statistics here is broken down into states. Very good, because you can see which states have the current high number of cases. For example, here they compare the cases according with the states during the latest week. They like to compare cases using epidemiological week. So usually they will compare the cases. For example, they compare epic week number 30, for example. They compare this year's case with last year's case, and they look at the trend. So I'm going to show you the trend after this. Okay, apart from the absolute number of cases, the number of cases, for example, you can see that Selangor has higher cases compared to other states. You can also know in this website, iDengue, the hotspot. What do I mean by hotspot? Hotspot is when the locality is declared to be dengue prone because the outbreak is not controlled. Okay, after 30 days, the outbreak is still not controlled, still having new cases, then it's considered to be uncontrolled outbreak, and therefore it is classified or be promoted to be hotspot areas. So hotspot area, they will do more aggressive control measures. Okay, so basically if you look at this one, For example here, Hulu Selangor, okay, if you can see the slide here, they have the cumulative cases of 137. The outbreak started on the 9th of December 2019, and it is still not yet finished. It is still, they cannot close the outbreak. The outbreak is still continued because it is more than 30 days. So basically, here you can see that the number of days of the outbreak is almost 200 days. Okay, so you know the areas that is considered to be high risk for dengue. So this is very important in public health because we want to address the most important measure of control to these areas. Okay, this is what I'm talking about in my earlier slides. In this slide, it shows to you the trend of dengue cases according to Minggu Epi, epidemiological week. So 1 year we have 52 epi weeks. Okay, so it compares this year with the previous year. As you can see in this graph here, you can see the trend of dengue cases actually spikes mostly during the I'm talking about last year, during the early in January, middle, as well as December. There are a lot of studies, scholarly articles or scholarly journals, and also studies shown that dengue is actually related to our seasons, our seasonal monsoons. Okay, when the rainy days come, it will cause more stagnant water and it will flood the area. Not just flooding, but also create stagnant water, especially in construction area, which is a very high risk of dengue transmission there, because in construction areas there are a lot of potholes, there are a lot of empty bottles, empty plastics thrown by the workers. So these can be a breeding ground for Aedes mosquitoes. So if you look at the trend here compared to last year, it's not so much different. Even during the first half of the year, I think this is because of we have the COVID-19 this year. So therefore, the detection here, the distribution of the cases is actually less compared to last year. Okay, because the resources, a lot of resources in pejabat kesihatan as well as jabatan kesihatan has gone to the COVID-19 control measures. So therefore, the aggressiveness of the control measure might not be as much as the previous year when there were no COVID-19. But if you look closely here, the cases start to come up after we have so-called flatten the curve of COVID-19. You can see that the detection of dengue cases is rising. So we cannot be complacent here. We need to be good Samaritans, good community, to check whether our houses actually have stagnant water, and we need to remove the breeding grounds. I will come to that later. So if everything about communicable diseases, you need to apply the agent, host, and environment, as well as vector. So I put here the numbers, number 1, okay, number 2, number 3, and number 4 is according to the evidences as well as the recent observation. These are the most important control measures that you need to do. Okay, for example, in dengue, environmental control is quite important but rarely been emphasized. Second is, of course, the vector. The third, of course, the agent. Okay, the dengue, the Aedes, not the Aedes, the the arbovirus, then V, then 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, as well as the host factor. Okay. So why do I say environment? Okay, if you look at this picture is the norms during Hari Raya. If you look at the highways, when there is jams, people like to throw rubbish out of the cars, or out of their cars. Okay, do you know that these rubbishes are the most exciting place for dengue or Aedes mosquitoes to breed? Because people actually look at the normal places for Aedes to breed. For example, tires, tree pots, but they forget that the tin cans, the plastic bags are a very conducive breeding area for Aedes mosquitoes. Okay. So we need to educate the people on to take care of the environment. So therefore, environment has to be taken care not just by the local authorities. Okay, for example, the Majlis Pembadaran, MPK, for example, in Kuantan, but also the community. So you need a two-way effort in order for us to remove the breeding grounds of Aedes mosquito. Okay, coming back to the area, the area of breeding grounds for Aedes mosquito is basically our homes, including myself. So when we are dealing with dengue, please check your vases. Please check your surroundings inside and also outside your home. Not just outside your homes, okay, but also inside your homes. You need to really check where is there any stagnant water, number one. Number two, you need to remove the stagnant water. Okay. Number three, you need to scrub the place that you found the stagnant water, because the dengue eggs, not the dengue eggs, the Aedes mosquito eggs can actually stick to surfaces. So you need to really scrub your vases, to scrub the places that you find the stagnant water. You cannot just throw away the water, but you also need to scrub it. By doing so, hopefully the Aedes eggs will also be removed. Okay, so it will not become pupa and larva. Subsequently, do not go into adult stage of mosquito. All right. Okay. Number two, vector. Okay, you need, when we talk about dengue, you need to talk about the vector. So two main types of vector in dengue. The first one is Albopictus, okay, Aedes albopictus, and also Aedes aegypti. Okay, in general, Aedes aegypti is found more in urban areas, but Albopictus is more found in thick vegetations and also slightly outskirts of the town. But do you know that the distribution of the species is becoming more and more difficult to distinguish? Is because there are a lot of new housing areas being put up, okay, and because of movement of people. For example, people move from rural to urban areas much more frequent as compared to our parents and also grandfathers before. So therefore, the species tend to migrate. You can find Aedes albopictus now in urban areas as well. Okay, not just in rural areas. So in terms of the biting, I want to focus on biting. Aegypti is known to be sneaky biter. Albopictus is aggressive. Okay, sneaky biter here means that when you go into places where it is dark, okay, it is moist, it is near the breeding grounds, it tends to bite. But Albopictus tends to fly around find blood meals of the humans and bite them much more frequently. So therefore, both are actually almost equally dangerous. We cannot take lightly. So you need to find. We need to find the breeding grounds, because without the breeding grounds, this mosquito will not go into this adult stage. So basically, visually you can see that the mosquito for Aedes has the stripe pattern of the, or when we call it as white banded legs. So this is the distinguishing feature when we distinguish Aedes mosquito with an Anopheles mosquito. We will come to that later on. Okay, agent. Okay, agent is the dengue virus itself. We have 4 serotypes. Okay, what is most important that you need to know regarding agent is because of enhancing antibodies. When you get infection from, for example here, DEN1 virus, and subsequently you get later on you get another infection of DEN2. Okay, this DEN2 tends to be more severe. Okay, why does this phenomenon happen? Not all cases, some of the cases. It's because, and some people also mention mutation, but I'm not going to touch that into detail. Why does second or subsequent infection of dengue is much more dangerous? I think you have gone through this in your internal medicine. It's because of the enhancing antibodies. The antibody that developed from DEN1 basically binds to the monocytes, okay, binds to the white blood cell, and the antigen from the dengue 2 virus gets into the monocytes and replicates, because the antibody from DEN1 previously helps the antigen to come inside, it gets into the monocyte and multiply. So you get more and more copies of the DEN2 virus, much more than the first time. The first time you do not have these enhancing antibodies. So the second one you have. So it tends to become, you have more severe capillary permeability that causes the severe dengue, right? Okay. Last but not least in the EPID triad is the host. Host factor, immunity wise, might play a role, but not as much as COVID-19 or other diseases. But the host factor, what is important in terms of host factor is mainly due to the movement of people, okay? Especially during the school holidays, not just school holidays, when we talk about PKPP, okay? PKPP or RMCO, people start to travel, okay? People start to travel, they think that, yay, we already successfully combat COVID-19, we can go anywhere we like, okay? Some people are good, they still follow the SOP. Some people good, they still take precautions, okay? And they take care of their houses, of breeding grounds of dengue. But some couldn't care less about these infectious diseases. So therefore, you can see now a surge in dengue. Dengue recently is much more worse than COVID-19. Okay, more people die due to dengue as compared to COVID-19. Okay, this is a fact that we need to take into account. All right. Okay, this is what I talked about earlier, the concept of enhancing. When you have the antibody, it binds to, the previous infection. It binds to the new infection, the new serotype of dengue, and it becomes more copies. All right, causes more severe disease. Okay, so basically, this is the level of enforcement, as I mentioned earlier. For environment, we need to do enforcement. Okay, without enforcement, dengue cannot be controlled. Number 2 is the integrated vector. Okay, we need to control the vector. How? Through integrated vector management. Number 3 is detection of the dengue virus, of course using early detection and promptly treat the patient. And last but not least is the host factor. Of course, the host factor simply you need to use and know the PPEs. Okay, PPEs is not just your mask, your gloves. PPEs is more than that. I'll come to that later. So basically for enforcement, this is one of the enforcement activity that I joined during my stint in Pejabat Kesihatan Daerah Kuantan, whereby we go to this construction site, we detect the larvae of dengue found in these construction sites happily breeding. Okay, we straight away compound the area. Okay, compound. How much is the compound? Is approximately around 500 ringgit. If you found an area with a breeding ground for mosquito, the person that owns the place is liable to be compounded around 500 ringgit. Okay, without enforcement, people will not do anything. Okay, that's why enforcement is still important. Okay, not just the enforcement part, but also during enforcement we give health promotion. Okay, how to take care of the environment. Okay, in terms of the vector, vector itself mainly touches on the chemical control. Okay, chemical control, and chemical control cannot be successful by itself. It need to be combined with the environmental vector that I have mentioned earlier. Okay, so therefore chemical control for vector of Aedes Aedes mosquito is basically chemical control for adult mosquito and chemical control for the larvae, the larva stage of Aedes mosquito. So for adult stage, of course, we need to do fogging. Fogging using pesticide, organophosphate. Previously, it uses malathion base. Now we have shifted into using resigent base, water base, resigent, aqua resigent, for a much more effective control measure of the adult mosquito. Okay, so I'm talking about adult mosquito. For larvae and also for breeding grounds of mosquito, we use abate. Abate is also called Tamifos. Tamifos, a type of organophosphate. It is basically in packet or sachet form. So therefore, one sachet can cover around a few square inches of area. So you put the area according to the vicinity of the breeding ground. You put in the abate. You just put one sachet or two sachets depending on the area, and you leave it, and hopefully the larva that is inside the stagnant water will die off. Okay, so you have two measures of control here: chemical, which is adult, and also larvae. And of course, you need to do the community waste, which is what we call as take 10 minutes or 15 minutes of your time to check whether your area or your house is having any breeding ground. And we can also use the concept of COMBI, communication for behavioral impact. COMBI is being done in Malaysia and advocated by WHO. It is basically to empower our people, okay, including myself, to take care of my housing area, to inspect my area of house at least 10 to 15 minutes per day, remove any stagnant water that can be a breeding ground for our Aedes mosquito. Okay, this is a picture of the additional component towards the integrated vector management, whereby we do gotong royong. So this gotong royong is together with our IK, PPKP, as well as our PKA. So you need to know this term. PPKP, PKP, PKA, PRA, all of these terms you need to know when you are being attached to PKD later on. Okay, if not now, then maybe later during your working life. So these are basically the backbone of public health. Okay, without these frontliners, we cannot win the war against not just COVID-19 but also dengue. Okay, so basically the next phase is actually to control to control in terms of the detection of the virus. So early detection using NS1 antigen, it is basically important during the early phase. After the incubation period of 7 to 14 days, we can detect the viral antigen during the first 5 days using NS1. After that only we will be able to detect the IgM and IgG. So usually in clinical setting, I think most of you have been familiar with this combo test. Basically you detect the NS1 as well as you detect the antibody. So each of the detection depends on the history of the patient. So we need to get a further or thorough clinical history of the patient. Where does this patient gets the infection from? So then only you can plan what type of blood investigation that you need to take and what are the fluid management that you need to do to the patient, right? So, okay, PPE. Okay, PPE, we not just concerned with gloves, but in dengue and also Zika. Remember Zika wants to be thought to become wants thought to be the cause of microcephaly. Okay, very dangerous side effect of the virus. So these are the things that you need to consider when you want to prevent dengue. You need to face the facts that dengue or the mosquito itself bites daytime. Daytime here means around 7 a.m. and nighttime around 7 p.m. So you need to avoid these time periods and make sure that you wear or you put insect repellents. Insect repellent here, one of the most important ingredient is diethyl toluene, DEET. Okay, if you can find this one, then most likely the insect repellent is going to be much more effective, because this insect repellent, as the name implies, it does not kill the adult mosquito, but the DEET itself will interrupt the neurons on the antennas of the mosquito, so the mosquito will run away or fly away from you. All right, that's the function of the DEET. And of course, you need to wear protective clothes, wear long sleeves, wear pants, okay, not shorts, okay. And of course, you can take care of your homes, so that the adult will not go into your homes, as well as checking all the areas inside your home that can breed mosquito. Okay, in terms of the law, as I mentioned earlier, compoundable 500 ringgit. This one according to another act that you need to know, Destruction of Disease Bearing Insect Act 1975, as well as the Prevention and Control of Infectious Disease Act 1988. So dengue, it is mandatory for you to notify within 24 hours. Failure to notify, of course, you are also compoundable up to 500 ringgit. Okay, that's about dengue. Now we come to another enemy vector-borne disease of public health importance, malaria. Okay, why do I show to you this picture? Is because of this guy here. Okay, this what we call as Mat Salleh monkey. Okay, you can see the appearance of the face here. Why do I call Mat Salleh? Figure out for yourself. Basically, this monkey. Okay, this monkey is basically related to the type of malaria that I'm going to discuss after this. Okay, so the enemy for malaria is Anopheles mosquito. If you can see here, Anopheles mosquito does not have white banded legs as Aedes mosquito. Okay, something important about malaria is you need to know some definition. We have imported malaria. Okay, imported malaria is malaria not from our country. Indigenous is coming from our country. Okay, not from imported case. Induced is when the parasite, malaria is a parasite, not a virus or bacteria. So induced is basically coming from transfusion, coming from other forms of parenteral inoculation, but not through the normal transmission by a mosquito. Very rarely we see the induced malaria. Okay. As well as introduced. Introduced is when you have imported case of malaria. This mosquito will bite the imported case of malaria and causing transmission to a local people. Okay. So when that happens, we call it as introduced malaria. Okay, in Malaysia, we have done a good job in controlling malaria. If you can see the statistics here, from 2010 until 2018, we have successfully reduced indigenous case, our local case, until it reaches zero, zero indigenous case. So this is basically the result of our program Eliminasi Malaria Kebangsaan, PSEMK, whereby we did the concept of same like dengue as well. We advocate the concept of integrated vector management. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, malaria is a type of parasite. So you need the gold standard to detect it is still blood film for malaria parasite. Remember your basic medical, you have the thick smear and also thin smear. Okay, so these are the 4 types of malaria parasite: Falciparum, Vivax, Malaria ovale. We have another one. Okay, it's called Knowlesi. Okay, Knowlesi is a zoonotic malaria, the one that I showed in my slide that shows the monkey, the macaque. So this Knowlesi malaria is now known to be the most problematic out of all of the Plasmodium parasites, Knowlesi malaria, because zoonotic malaria, more and more monkeys comes into contact with human beings because of the construction, because of the neighborhood, because of the traveling. So therefore, people get infected with Knowlesi malaria more compared to other types. In terms of the screening, we have the point of care testing. Okay, point of care testing is different from our gold standard of BFMP, whereby there are a lot of technologies used here, biosensors to detect infected RBC. This one, a project from Uganda, as well as other parts of the world. You can find the literatures regarding this one, and also rapid diagnostic test RDT to detect the parasite antigen. But the issue is still sensitivity and specificity. Okay, why do I mention this is because the sensitivity and specificity is variable, some high, some low, and according to the latest evidence, it still fails to have a good sensitivity and specificity to detect and also to screen the malaria as compared to the BFMP or blood film for malaria parasite. Okay, so that's why it is rarely used in the clinical setting, especially in Malaysia. Okay, so in Malaysia, in order for us to detect the parasite, we first need to know the areas. So the areas for malaria mapping is previously in 2008, it uses the concept of red, yellow, and green. Okay, red is when the number of cases is more than 1 per population. Yellow is less than 1 per 1,000 population. Green, there's no local case. Now they have shifted it to be in terms of foci area. Focus area. So there are 3 main foci or focus area. Number 1 is cleared up. Cleared up means that there are no active cases, 0 cases, and the strategy is just to maintain the level up to 0. So the way to maintain it is basically to make sure that there are no imported cases goes into the area. Okay, the breeding grounds of the malaria is found and destroyed, so on and so forth. Another foci is called non-active. We have the old cases that is detected chronically, but there are no transmission. Means to say that, for example, there are one case still under treatment, but there are no new cases coming up. So this is what we call as non-active or residual. So the level of prevention is actually basically to prevent the transmission. Okay, prevent the transmission by actively detecting the cases as well as treating the cases. When you have active transmission, it becomes an outbreak. Okay, when there becomes an outbreak, of course, the level of control is much more aggressive. Okay, you need to do ACD, active case detection. You need to do mass blood survey. You need to screen everyone inside the area where there is an active transmission. You need to give the treatment early, and you need to follow up the place. You need to downgrade this from active into non-active and so on and so forth, so that we can control the malaria better. So this is the fieldwork, the checklist that most of the clinic kesihatan have inside their clinics. If you go to clinics, you can find it. You should find this document. Sorry if you cannot see it closely, but here it classifies the area into foci. Okay, pseudofoci is another type of classification. It is basically not fall under cleared or residual or active, so it is called pseudo. And what are the level of surveillance or the monitoring that need to be done? What is the intervention that need to be done? Okay, this is the checklist that needs to be followed by all of the staff that works with malaria. IVM, integrated vector management, is almost the same as the dengue, but the level of control, the control measures slightly different, whereby in malaria we focus on providing bed nets, especially for rural areas, treated bed nets treated with parasite or pesticide, okay, drug treatment, indoor residual spraying, as well as environmental management. Okay, what is that? So this is basically breeding ground. We need to find when we have outbreak, we need to find the breeding grounds. We can put the insecticides, okay, inside the breeding ground, and we can remove the stagnant waters, okay, based depending on the locality. Okay, you have the indoor residual spraying. Okay, why do we do indoor residual spraying in malaria? Is because malaria mosquito, Anopheles mosquito, like to rest indoors and rest on the walls. Okay, when they rest on the walls, we need to put spikes, or we need to put a killing solution on the walls itself. So the concept of IRS, or indoor residual spraying, is TOKUSHUR, total, complete, sufficient, regular. If we do this, then only we can achieve the level of control of going down from active foci into residual foci. If we do it rarely using this method, then the mosquito will still be alive and will still bite people because of inadequate spraying of the insecticide on using the IRS. Okay, so this is the bed nets. Bed nets, as I mentioned earlier, those who work in the plantation, especially the workers, the workers who work in palm oil, they are all at risk of malaria more compared to the normal general population. So therefore, if they do not have a proper control measure, for example, they do not have the protection, for example, the PPEs, they need to sleep in the bed nets. Okay, so the mosquito that comes into contact with the bed nets will die because it have the insecticide on it. All right. Okay, so malaria control measure is almost same as dengue, just slight differences, but you need to really know about the integrated vector management. Okay, for filaria, filaria has more complications in terms of the chronic infection, complication, and also prevention control. Okay, so the mosquito that that brings about filaria, okay, filariasis is Culex. Okay, Culex. So these I show to you this is because of the differences in terms of the vector. So dengue, the white-banded legs. Anopheles is more less brownish as compared to Culex. Okay, and the size also is different, whereby the dorsum or the body of Culex is bigger compared to Anopheles. Okay, it's much more thinner, and also the eggs itself. Culex is more, the eggs is more close together if you see under the microscope as compared to Aedes as well as Anopheles. Okay, why do I mention filariasis is a chronic problem? It's because it can cause genital disease, hydrocele, not just elephantiasis or the lymphedema of the leg, but also hydrocele. Okay, remember what Prof. Pake or Dr. Soraya previous lecture. So the picture is classical. Okay, if you find a person with elephantiasis, it is almost pathognomonic of being a filaria. Okay, after you have excluded the other differential diagnosis. So basically, it's still a problem in the Southeast Asian region. Okay, so Malaysia, we still have focuses of infection. For example, in Pahang, we still can find cases in Rompin, some parts of Jerantot. Okay, so we still have the problem here, especially the rural and also Orang Asli settlements. Okay, so this is the parasite. Okay, Wuchereria bancrofti parasite. So basically, the microfilaria is brought by the by the mosquito, bites the human, goes into the lymphatic and blood circulation, and when it comes into the blood circulation, the mosquito will bite, taking the microfilaria inside, and it will shed the sheath, goes into the midgut of the mosquito, and becomes the L1 larva and L3 larva, and migrate into the proboscis or the area of biting of the mosquito, and subsequently the cycle carries on. Okay, so the thing about filaria is the chronicity. So therefore, we need to screen and treat early. So that is why our control program has been there for quite some time, 1960s already. So compared to the detection of malaria, we do mass blood survey, MBS. Okay, but in filaria we do night blood survey, NBS. Why night? Is because the microfilaria tends to migrate into the bloodstream at night. So therefore, we can catch the blood that contains the microfilaria more at night as compared to the daytime. Alright, and then we can give the treatment. So we need to reduce the treatment, we need to reduce the lymphatic filaria less than microfilaria, less than 1 per 1,000 population. Then only we can consider national elimination. If we have more than 1 case per 1,000 population, we cannot say the area is eliminated from malaria. Alright. So endemic is still the rate greater than 1. So if this one is constant, it's considered as endemic area. So what are the rationale behind the control program? Why do we do this national control program? It's because the chronicity of, we need to prevent the chronicity of this disease, because the disease is basically treatable if we find early and treat early. So filaria is basically using human as their definitive host. So only human beings need to be treated here. If let's say the parasite goes into the vector, there's no amplification of the infection. The infection does not become more severe. It remains static, just that the vector, the Culex mosquito, brings about the parasite only, carrier of the parasite only. And it requires prolonged exposure before infection is established. So that's why we need to do, if we find the area most likely to have filaria, we need to have high index of suspicion to screen them. Okay, I have experience during my PKD stint, PKD Pekan stint, whereby we found out that there's one important case of filaria in Terengganu, where when traced back, the person actually comes from Rompin, Pahang. And then when we investigate, we do active case detection of the filaria. We found out that more than 20 people inside the kampung in Rompin, Pahang has been infected with filaria. If we do not find the first in that case, then we won't find the filaria inside the people that in the kampung. So basically, one case leads to multiple cases. So very interesting thing that public health always face. Okay, so what are the other factors that is important in terms of the elimination? Is because we have the drugs. We have the drugs, we have the diagnostic tools, and the cost of the program. The cost of the program is quite sufficient for us to do the control program. I'm sorry, I skipped the previous slide, but basically because of we can detect early, treat early, so therefore the treatment is basically to treat the lymphatic filaria. So how to treat it? We give a combination of single dose albendazole plus diethyl carbamazine (DEC), and it is actually 99% effective in removing all of the microfilaria. So that's about drug treatment. We treat the patient. We screen all of the people inside the area, and we treat them also. And also we do the basic vector and also larval control measures. And for the people, we need to treat the complications. For example, there are lymphatic filariasis that causes elephantiasis. We need to refer them to surgery to do surgical treatment. Okay, for example, the varicose veins, and also to remove, to do cosmetic or plastic surgery to improve the venous and also lymphatic circulation of the leg. So basically, it is a multi-agency, multidiscipline collaboration for us to control filaria. So I think that's all. So for this, for the session of EPID of CDC and also vector-borne, basically one thing that I want to emphasize to all of you is basically the importance of detection of one case. When we detect one case, we treat one case, we will able, inshallah, by Allah's will, to prevent other cases. We can prevent other cases from happening. So we can prevent an outbreak, and this is clearly stated in the Quran. Whoever kills innocent human being, it shall be as if he had killed all of mankind, and whosoever saved the life of one, it shall be as if he has saved the life of all mankind. So basically, you need to be very mindful of the importance of public health in terms of prevention and control of infectious diseases. Okay, that's all. Thank you very much.